In the monastery where I was ordained in Italy, we had quite a lot to do with guests coming for either the weekend or 5 days or more to have a quiet time. And we used to give them a dépliant, one of these little folders, homemade, but it started with this verse that we have just read. Come apart to a lonely place and rest a while. In Italian it was Venite in disparte. And the monastery itself was suggestive because it was a difficult place to get to, and once one was there it was actually quiet, and nature helped in making it relaxing, and all one had to do when leading guests into prayer was to advise them to take advantage of what was actually there, provided by the Creator. Take a Bible, find a tree, and let Him minister to your soul, away from other people. It was helped also by the fact that with regard to any people who might come with a mobile phone, the signal was pretty weak. Indeed, there was no signal at all in church, which was an ancient medieval one with thick walls. There was one spot outside, we used to refer to it as the albero magico, the magic tree, where there was a faint signal, and there, like bees, the young people would tend to gather and get in contact with real life. Now, with regard to this, we need to be aware that if the Lord gave them this advice, they had no leisure even to eat, for many were coming and going, that it means that He saw for all future centuries that this advice was to be taken seriously, especially those in the service of the Lord Himself. And we see in our day, perhaps slightly less actually right now in the lockdown, but in general it is the plague of those in ministry. We call it being too thinly spread. And precisely what happens in the gospel happens in their life, but many times over, because of the channels of accessibility in their pocket, on a screen, all that's out there, multiplied many times over compared with what the disciples had to face. What happens? As He landed, He saw a great throng. Now, they've got there by another means. They got, remember, into the boat, to a lonely place by themselves. And these other people have a notion of where they must have gone, and so they go round. They ran there on foot. They've gone round the Sea of Galilee, essentially, and they're waiting for Him at the other side. Now, humanly speaking, the disciples could have had a reaction, oh no, more of the same thing. But the Lord, by His reaction, gives us a teaching. If that happens to you, you don't give that message to the person who comes, even though you are tired. You don't liquidate them with a quick word to send them away, but you have what? Compassion on them. Why? Because they were like sheep without a shepherd. Now, the shepherd has a notion of the one who might be going astray. My own family's roots are in the sheep farming in Wales. One of my cousins is an expert at sheepdog training, and boy is there a rapport between him and his dogs, and they very much collaborate with making sure that one sheep doesn't leave the pack, because sheep can go really astray. The same with the shepherd. We have to be aware that without us they will go astray. Now, with regard to going astray, it can happen more now than ever before, because people are, especially in lockdown, spending a lot of time on screens, and if they're Christian souls, they can be, for good motives, going into Christian sites and channels. But what are they getting there? there is the danger that because they see fervour and goodwill and what we might call the oomph factor in certain areas, that they will stick there without realising that over time they're getting a message which is not safe. And that can be actually too much to the left or too much to the right. I think you know what I mean. Therefore we need an internal filter, and to go only to where they're getting what the Lord wants them to hear, because as in food, we are what we take in. We can poison ourselves by intake of alcohol and all kinds of things, or fatty foods, damage our body and soul. The same with the Spirit. We are what we eat, and therefore we ask the Holy Spirit to guide us before we choose a book or even actually a channel or a site. Our poet in England, John Milton, has one line: "The hungry sheep look up and are not fed." He's talking there in the situation of puritanical England at the time. The word of preaching was important to them. Remember now, they hadn't got the sacramental life anymore as we have it, but they had the word. And the construction of churches in England is still indicating the importance of the word. They preach from a pulpit, and people are depending on the word for the week. But that now is in the pulpit of the screen. So, for this one or that one who might be involved with that ministry, a virtual ministry, it's kind of important to be aware that it's powerful and put there in your hands by the Lord of hosts, who's not abandoning his people. And therefore every time you open your mouth to minister to somebody through this pulpit, you must make sure that it's not your word. Holy Spirit, give me your words. And for that to be the case, one comes back to this gospel and one comes apart to receive and be ministered to. Otherwise, one is giving off from one's own treasury, which can be very human. It must be divine. And therefore, what they need is truth. As they would say in the courts, truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And that's hard to find, because people now are badly catechized. I conclude, this element of coming apart we need to safeguard. The only safe place actually is the early morning and the late night. The day can be what it is, but if we don't safeguard those moments, sacred space, where there's intimacy for the soul to be ministered to, then we too will become far too thinly spread. Al monastero ero responsabile per gli ospiti e si dava un dépliant a ognuno quando arrivava. Cominciava con questo versetto appena letto: Venite in disparte. Sant'Antimo era un luogo in disparte, era molto difficile a trovare, ore di viaggio, però era tranquillo. E la natura aiutava. La natura aiuta a tranquillizzare l'anima e dà uno spazio sacro in cui Gesù ha accesso. Dicevo agli ospiti: prendete la scrittura e trovate un albero, un posto verde e tranquillo, e Gesù farà il resto. Anche per noi conta lo spazio sacro in cui non c'è rumore né contatto. A proposito del contatto, abbiamo il Vangelo: Gesù e i discepoli che vanno in un posto a disparte, però la gente segue. Ma il Signore accetta anche questo, avendo compassione, perché erano come pecore senza pastore. Anche noi dobbiamo accettare la persona che la provvidenza ci manda a un momento non propizio. Sentono quando sono liquidate da noi. Una parola e basta. Il pastore ha cura della pecora anche smarrita. Chiediamo questa grazia però di essere anche in controllo del tempo, perché altrimenti la vita nostra sarà sacrificata a troppe cose. e non si sentirà più l'intimità del nostro Salvatore. Si sente solo quando siamo occhi negli occhi.